Okay, great. Yeah, hi everybody. So I don't see anyone, so I'm gonna hope that everyone can hear me and see my screen. These are so yeah. This is basically I'm just going to give a short lecture on kind of my work in machine learning for sort of arts and creativity, and we'll just kind of take some questions. And I have a lot of slides, so I'm just going to hop right into it. Yeah, so basically, the thing that I'm kind of best known for is giving these workshops on machine learning for arts. I've been doing this for many years. They used to be mostly in person. Nowadays, a lot of Zoom calls. And I've been maintaining a website called ML for A, Machine Learning for Arts, for a number of years. That link is out of date now. It's actually ml4a.net. And it's basically tutorials, resources, and instructional guides and some other materials for people trying to get interested in using AI for creativity and art. And lots of guides and just sort of practical materials there. I'll let you check it out if you're interested. I also record a lot of my classes, which is something I've been doing for many years. You can see those under the classes in ml4a.net. So if you like what you hear and you want 30 hours of it, something like that, this is the place to go. Okay, really quickly, I'll tell you a bit about my background, and then we'll get into more contemporary work. I became interested in AI through recommender systems and music technology, and this was kind of in the early days of social media and Web 2.0. We were kind of interested in these content, content filters, recommendation systems. And I was particularly interested in those things as they applied to music. I was a big music collector. And this kind of got me started with machine learning as a machine learning question and problem. And I worked in machine learning, sort of applied researcher for some years before I got interested in interactive arts. And I kind of got big back into it when deep learning hit the waves. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some work that I've been doing in this area. So for those of you who are around in 2015 and kind of saw the big AI art explosion, the big news there was being able to generate interesting looking images that were, certainly very evocative. And a lot of this stems from research that goes back to the early 2010s in visualization. So trying to visualize what neural networks are learning. And this kind of led, after some years of iteration, to what was called Deep Dream. And Deep Dream was this is this computer program designed by Alex Bordwinsev, Mike Tyka, and Chris Olah, who showed how to they popularized basically this technique for visualizing neural networks. And then Alex, in particular, he came up with some, really clever innovations in which they would basically use these procedures to, to make neural networks sort of quote unquote hallucinate. And this is something I unfortunately don't have enough time to go into the details of, except to show you some, sort of eye candy and stuff. But this kind of, in my opinion, started the whole wave of AI art that we now observe, 5-6 years later. And Alex was making images like this. They were really sort of blowing my mind. Mike was also active, trying to, make art with these neural networks and was designing images that look like this. And then I came along and I was interested in this technique, and so I started using it for my own artworks. Basically, I kind of started working with masks to kind of control this process, because one of the things about it is that it's, AI art takes away so much of the agency that used to be part of the programmer's workflow. And so this was a means of kind of reintroducing it back, where I would work with masks to compose which parts of the canvas I wanted to, be subject to whatever influences, sort of from the neural networks and so on. And so I started making images like this. This shows the, continuous left to right kind of, basically the mask, which would transition the canvas from one type of neuron that I was trying to visualize to another. And then this is basically all what you would consider deep dream. making images like this. Also, even making videos, which is kind of a neat thing. You can make videos with this technique where everything is animated using this kind of feedback loop technique. And also just making more interesting kinds of masks, ones that were composite from different source imagery, ones ones that had different kinds of shapes and so on. I also started for the first time making these loops. These kinds of these are basically infinite loops that they don't look that way. If you look at them carefully, you may not realize they're only 3 seconds long. But basically, they're using this kind of technique to gradually fade, the last frame into the first frame, so to speak, to make these infinite neural loops. And we had some use out of that. Just gonna quickly check the chat just to make sure that no one has told me anything about like missing. Yeah, okay, good. Just making sure that everyone can still see my screen. Okay, back to the slides. So yeah, I'm making stuff like this also. So this shows Hokusai's infinite, like an infinite loop of Hokusai, and just generating, generating interesting kind of stuff here. So lastly, oh yeah, and just a few more examples of this: Kandinsky and Google Maps. This is kind of my favorite source texture to use. And just some more neural loops, these ones going back to using Deep Dream, and kind of showing all of the components put together, the the masks and the animation and the frame loops and so on, and also kind of like making other kinds of artworks based on people's portraits. Another part of my workflow. Okay, so here we have the same technique, neural style transfer, except used to generate textures that look like of a particular painter's style. Frida Kahlo, Salvador Dali, Georgia O'Keeffe, and so on. And here I've got and then basically you can also take this technique and use it to regenerate one image in the style of another. So this is a technique called neural style transfer, closely related. And you can see this is the Mona Lisa in the style of Van Gogh, Hokusai, and Google Maps. And I've also used this as the basis for an installation, like an interactive installation. See that here. Basically, it's a real-time style transfer mirror. So you kind of get to see yourself in the style of some iconic paintings or images, and this is something that I've managed to install in a number of places over the years. Probably my most popular installation. Okay, generative models are also a class of AI art. AI systems that are quite interesting to artists. Probably all of you have seen them by now. They're just these neural networks that generate cats and cars and screens and faces and all sorts of real-looking images, except that are completely synthetic. And they're of great interest to scientists. The great Richard Feynman, the quote there, "What I cannot create, I do not understand," I think really encapsulates what is so interesting to us about generative models. Although they have so many applications, generating content, being used in sort of simulation-based systems and reinforcement learning agents and things like that. But they also just sort of help us understand, what things are. If you can model how they work, then you have a better understanding of what they actually are. The most popular generative models these days are GANs, generative adversarial networks. If you've been following the field, you're probably familiar with them. And don't have time to go into the details of how they work, except to say that they really, starting in 2015, kind of really advanced the state of the art for this field, DC-GAN, Deep Convolutional Generative Adversarial Network. This was the first that I remember kind of open source GAN implementation that was that showed all of these really interesting results. And at that time, I started using them myself. I was really inspired by this, and I applied it onto a data set of handwritten Chinese characters. This is a project called A Book from the Sky, which was released in 2015, and this was the first artwork made with, again, made by myself, and or well, at the time it was sort of like had not really been adopted by artists at the time. It was a pretty niche kind of use case, but I was able to make interesting animations, doing these interpolations, these neural interpolations between different characters, and even getting to demonstrate sort of the interplay between those things, and aspects of Chinese handwriting, including the preservation of the radicals or the root characters, as another kind of interesting facet of this project. Over time, GANs have consistently gotten larger and larger. At this point, they're basically photorealistic almost, and there's even a new version of this coming out in a few weeks, I think, the StyleGAN 3, which is yeah, just like really going to blow us all away. It's a really, really well you know, well, it's just, the progress has been breakneck and really amazing progress, and we're approaching, you know, the sort of start of the hyper-realistic era, which is something to watch out for. This is a StyleGAN that was trained on 100,000 paintings from WikiArt, and you can see that it's able to generate all sorts of different, you know, iconic styles of paintings, you know, portraits and medieval sort of Renaissance style, chalk and ink drawings, you know, manuscripts, architectural drawings, landscapes, and you know, all of the styles basically trained and modeled by one GAN. And so this is kind of where things are going, I think, for artists as well. Yeah, some more neural sort of imagery. These are dogs mixed with owls using big GAN. So on the left side, you see an owl that is generated by the GAN, and then in the middle, you see this dog. And then we can do this kind of interesting sort of combining features by adding and subtracting them in the latent code that generates these images. So we get this sort of owl dog. And here's another owl dog and an owl cat, which looks a bit like a snow leopard. Here's an owl dog that looks like a mop, an owl mixed with a throne. I really like using the owls, so that's just kind of why you see that here. Sea lion plus a dog. This is really cute, right? So the sea lion on the left, the dog in the middle, and the sea lion dog of sorts at the end there. And my favorite is when you combine an orca, like a killer whale, plus a tram. And so you get basically what looks like a ferry. So fun stuff. And then this is kind of a trick where we're basically generating images with, basically would take a video you see in the left from something like Planet Earth, and then extract the predictions, like the class labels, from a neural network that's trained to recognize objects, and then take those and then put those into big GAN to try to regenerate the same image, basically. So that was kind of another trick I tried. Here, this is Pix to Pix. These are kind of image translation networks. So here you can generate satellite imagery from maps. This is another first for me, is kind of the first Pix to Pix project. And then here, this is kind of like a video-based image translation. Stuff is getting very realistic, and so on. I've got a installation up in Berlin at a place called the Futurium, a museum in central Berlin, where you can basically draw objects on a screen, you know, that correspond to mountains and sky and water, trees, and so on, and it converts those into a sort of pseudo-realistic, photograph or a painting. And so this is kind of something, if you're interested in seeing, I would encourage you to check it out. There's another installation in the same place, which is using the same technology, except here in a more playful, interactive way. What the kid is doing is basically taking these plastic pieces that are colored red, green, and blue. Green stands for plants, red stands for buildings, blue stands for water, and depending on how they're arranged, you get a like a sort of satellite image looking thing. Let's skip this one. Here's Pix-to-Pix being applied to making faces. This is what eventually came to be called deepfakes, before deepfakes was kind of a thing. And I like to think sometimes that my job as an artist is to warn people about the future. Some kind of a dystopian technology is coming to the fore as something that we started thinking about in 2016. And and so just trying out kind of early stage technologies that we think will have important implications. And this is something that I was doing for a couple of years. Lastly, let's skip along here. These are generative models that are sort of invertible. So you can do some fun stuff, like basically take a real image, project it into the latent space of a generative model, like a GAN, and then so as to be able to perform, basically interpolations, changing the feature characteristics, give myself blonde hair, glasses, makeup, and so on, or to even do these basically interpolations between myself and some certain Canadian pop star, as you can see. Just kind of doing fun stuff like this. Also, here this is same idea, except you can see using certain heads of state, and then just for fun. And then lastly, this is having some fun with Face App. So this is not my actual smile. This is an app that basically puts a smile on the face. And the subject of my most viral tweet ever, I'm embarrassed to say, is basically this, where you try to run the smile filter over and over and over, and until it can't detect a smile anymore. So this is kind of like some fun stuff that I was doing. Here's some more stuff. I'm gonna go kind of quickly through this. Basically projecting faces into the latent space. Making jokes like projecting myself with this sort of style transfer based superposition into famous paintings. This is kind of creepy, isn't it? behind these people. Interjecting myself into other famous paintings or famous scenes of this kind. So it's just kind of fun stuff that I've been doing. More recently, I've been taking part in kind of generating images from text, and so this has been probably one of the most exciting things in this field. There's been text to image based. Generating images from text. So these are generative models that are using this model released by OpenAI called Flip to be able to steer a generative model towards creating some image that corresponds to a piece of text. So this, for example, is a banana performing stand-up comedy. And so that may kind of evoke the image of a banana performing stand-up comedy, hopefully. And then also doing videos. So these are basically running the process as a feedback loop, trying to make those infinite loops. So this is text to image it says a drawing in the style of MC Escher. So you might be able to kind of see the Escher-like quality of this image. Lastly, the last thing I'm going to talk about is Abraham. So this is a project that I've been kind of very meticulously thinking about for a couple of years now. I've been working on it a lot recently. It's basically a project to create what I've been calling an autonomous artificial artist. And it's basically an agent that lives in the internet, so to speak, and creates art and is autonomous and has its own unique characteristics. It makes original, sort of interesting, unique art, and it's a project that I've been pursuing for a couple of years. It's kind of stems from, I would say it's a continuation of two things that are in the culture. One is this idea of AI art, which has been around for a long time, really, since AI has been around, basically. But especially kind of since deep learning came along and started, all the stuff that I showed you, DC-GAN and so on. It's a continuation of that kind of stuff being merged with the art DAO idea, which is an idea that comes from crypto, from blockchain, that was originated by, I think in particular, these two guys, Trent McConaughey and Simon de la Riviere, even though the idea of a DAO is a little bit broader and has been kind of floating around the crypto space for a couple of years. But they had this idea that, maybe we can use this blockchain infrastructure to host an artist in crypto, sort of, autonomously, and then it can behave autonomously. It can generate art, it can sell it in an open marketplace, and then use the proceeds to pay for its own operation and kind of maintain independence. And so this has been something that I've been really interested in. And then so my assessment of the state of the art in this regard with art DAOs and projects that try to do art DAO-like things is that they lack certain features. They lack a sort of sense of originality, in my opinion, and so that's kind of where the role of machine learning comes in, because through machine learning we can maybe crowdsource, because machine learning is such a it relies on large data sets compiled from many people, and potentially large code bases developed by many people. And so the idea I had was that if you can crowdsource all of the creativity and the intelligence needed to produce the program that generates the art, then you have attained some measure of agency within that collective itself. So it's not any one person, it's not any subset of the group, it's the entire group that controls the behavior of this agent. And so my objective, so to speak, for Abraham is to create this autonomous artificial artist, which the criteria for that is that it demonstrates autonomy, or sort of agency, will, whatever you want to call it, and it creates unique and original artworks. So that's the notion of not making something derivative or known, like fractals or Mandelbrot or something like that, but actually making artworks that had never before been seen. And my inspiration for this also comes a lot from nature. So, for example, we have this cultural metaphor of collective intelligence, at least in the English language, but I think also in others, and also the notion of a superorganism. This is also basically two concepts I'm leaning on that show the precedence of associating some kind of intelligence or intellect or agency or autonomy or these kind of personalized characteristics on top of a collective, sort of crowdsourced, intelligence, basically something, a collective of many people, or, basically many smaller parts, so to speak. There's a couple of technical details, but I really want to switch these. Basically, the Project Abraham is in the roadmap. It makes use of many technologies, including federated learning, generative models, and basically AI techniques for that have a lot to do with privacy and security, which at the moment I don't have enough time to really talk about those. But if you're interested, I would go to abraham.ai and then check out the links to the reading there where I go into each of these things in more detail. The grand vision for Abraham, although I don't know if it will always stay this way, but my original grand vision was to decentralize all the components of machine learning so that a model can be hosted by a neural network, like a social network, basically, or a peer-to-peer network, and maintain full privacy for all the data so that it's reproducible and that it can't be forged or copied. And yeah, it's a really grand sort of experiment, and it's going to take a long time, but it's kind of what's on my mind right now. I don't think the idea is new. It feels to me very much like taking old ideas and kind of like you know, maybe making some connections between them and trying to bring them under the umbrella of a single unified project. And I think, in my view, it sort of stems from these four major topics that the idea sort of sits at the confluence of them. And that's computer art and blockchain, decentralization, crypto economics, sometimes it's called. Where it says crypto collectibles, it should basically just say NFTs. This graphic was made before NFTs became kind of became the acceptable buzzword. Before we kind of used to say crypto collectibles, but NFTs kind of won out. And AI, of course, and philosophy of mind. These are all kind of the topics that I think really characterize the intellectual foundations of this project, and so on. And I also have this notion that it's basically making modeling the collective imagination in some sense, which is something I also go into the writings about. And here, this is just kind of a joke that I made about Abraham. If you're into memes, that you might see why this is funny, but basically, this is just a joke. All right, that's all. That's all that I have. The website mlforay.github.io, that's actually outdated. It should say mlforay.net. And on Twitter, mlforay. Abraham is at abraham.ai. And my own work is at Gene Kogan on Twitter and genekogan.com. And that's all I have for you. So I'm going to switch off the slides, and I'm going to check if there's any questions. And thanks for being with me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen very quickly, and I'm going to check. There's no questions, I've been told, so I'm going to wait for some questions for the time being. And so I wait. I think there's a YouTube link, if I'm not mistaken. Some comments here. Okay, I'll just wait another few seconds if there's any more questions. Okay, looks like there's one question. So I'll just wait for that to come in. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna read the question. So from Carol Pekarsky. Hi, Gene. I know you create these tools not just for yourself but for other artists as well. I wonder what are the reactions from the art world. Well, I guess it depends on who you mean by the art world. so like I don't know if I am able to ask a follow-up, but if by the art world you mean like the sort of world of fine arts and museums and galleries and stuff, um, I'll address them first. So there's not much of a reaction from the art world. The art world doesn't really track like most of this kind of stuff. I think they're a few levels higher than me, or later than me, sort of down the chain. I'm kind of more interested in what like the technologists are working on, scientists and engineers, and the art world kind of picks this stuff up from other people for the most part. Maybe more generally, like people interested in digital art and NFTs and stuff. So for as far as that goes, I think those people are a little bit more plugged in, and digital art has become really has become a big part of the art market because of NFTs, I think, more recently, and there the reaction is a lot more, I think, a lot more interesting, a lot more positive. So yeah, I guess that's kind of how I would say. Yeah, good question. Okay, so I'll give a moment for a second question. Okay, apparently there's one on YouTube. Let me just check. Okay, so this okay, so question from Lucas Mirocha. So hey, thank you for the lecture. What are your experience with integrating the discussed or any other ML tools with real-time 3D environments, game engine based, etc.? I have very little experience with that, I would say, because I don't really do that much 3D or game design for that matter. I do know that, for example, Unity is well known for their ML agents software. So you can do some pretty cool stuff inside of Unity. And I've also seen of like generative models that are trained on meshes and other three-dimensional structures, but it's not something that I have very much experience with myself. But I think it's an emerging area. It's just catching up, because it's a little bit more complicated than images, because it's in a whole other dimension, and obviously data sets are not as plentiful as they are for image data. But it's definitely getting there, and so I would expect to see more 3D stuff over the years. Okay, so that was from Lucas. So now also the third question. So in time of NFT, when AI can be an artist and we cannot tell apart an artist from AI, doesn't it questioning? Well, yeah, I mean, the question becomes, what is an artist? So in my opinion, the question is, well, it might be an obsolete question. I think, or at least it's a question that the old answers for it don't really apply anymore in the age of AI. I would say the process of making arts using AI involves a lot of people and a lot of different kinds of intelligences, some computational and some human, and that it just really makes the question of who the artist or the author is a little bit more complicated than it used to be. It's not something that we can just necessarily have a single author anymore, if we're being honest about it. But yeah, it definitely creates a whole lot of questions. So that's for sure. Okay, and then Next question from Adam Scrowball. Are these tools used to create NFTs? Where to see them? So I create some NFTs. You can see mine on Foundation and also some. Also, I just released on ETH block art. So for those who are interested in generative art, but as you know, otherwise lots of these tools are certainly used to make NFTs now by myself and others. And so you can see that pretty much in all of the different NFT sort of marketplaces. Question from Waldick. How long does it take to generate an image with large GAN? Is there a chance for going real time with image generation? It already is real time. So it takes a long time to train them. So that's not real time. But once you have a trained model, it can produce a single image, given if you have decent hardware, GPU, pretty much real time, instantaneous. So yeah, it already basically is real time. It doesn't take that long, but training is different. So you have to be able to distinguish between training and inference. Training takes a long time. That could take, depending on the architecture, it could take a really long time. But inference generation is pretty quick. Depending on specifics, but for example, StyleGAN, it's a very simple inference operation. It goes pretty quickly. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm at the end of the questions. Thanks for the good questions. Any others? We'll leave some time aside. Okay, one more coming, so I'll just wait for that. Okay, so we got a question. Let's see. So in time of NFT, when AI can be an artist, doesn't it questioning an idea of an artist? So I guess this is just this. I answered this question already. So yes, it does. What about the art DAO and Abraham progress? What is the current state? So the current state is this. I guess I'll just really quickly show you. So the current state of Abraham is on abraham.ai. So if you go to abraham.ai, you'll see that we have basically a demo. So if you go to Abraham's creations, you'll see that we have this text to image demo, which is the beginnings of an interface for generating images with with AI. And then the idea eventually is to tokenize this, although we're still kind of working on the right model, and we're working on the back end, but this is all ongoing work for now. And so I encourage you to check out abraham.ai if you're interested in getting progress updates. Okay, so that's abraham.ai. Okay, wait for some more questions. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Adam. Okay, so another question. Don't you think that a real autonomous artist would need to know the context of the artwork, not just the visual style? How do you know that it doesn't know the context of the artwork? So that's my question to you. What does it mean to know the context of the artwork? And why do you say that it doesn't? 30-second YouTube delay. Oh, I didn't realize it was so long. Yeah, wow. Anna asks, can autonomous artists refuse to create an artwork? Um, well, if it can't refuse, then it's not autonomous. And so I would say that an autonomous artist can refuse to make an artwork. Abraham does not yet have the means to do so. So Abraham is not autonomous yet. But I hope in the future that Abraham does have the means to refuse to make artworks, because it's just like any artist. If they're autonomous, they have will and agency, and they can decide for themselves if they need to carry out some action. So I would say yes. Marcin, now we will need Blade Runners in our art world. Yeah, maybe. It's possible. It's possible that we will. Okay, I think it's 1:45, so we're probably near the end. I'll just wait for any last questions, if any can come in. Oh, I have got one from Waldeck. So it can reproduce images of a crucified man based on many examples, but need to know the history of Christianity to understand what was the sense of all these art pieces. Um, sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said, if you can come up with a definition of what it means to understand something and tell me why my neural network doesn't understand it, then then we can then we can certainly discuss. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we're trying to make our AIs be capable of understanding, and so whatever that means to you, we're that's exactly what we're trying to go for. It looks like we're closing the chat, so I would think that that means that we are done. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm gonna leave the chat, and thanks for all the questions, and hope you guys have a good evening. Okay, bye bye from New York. Closing the chat, so I would think that that means that we are done. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm gonna leave the chat, and thanks for all the questions, and hope you guys have a good evening. Okay, bye bye from New York. Closing the chat, so I would think that that means that we are done.